You're very welcome along to the last in the series of All Under One Roof of 2020. And I can tell you, we're not going to see the back of 2020. I just cannot wait. I'm sure we could all say the same. So my name is Claire Connolly. I'm the Managing Director of Claire Connolly Estate Agent based in Dundrum. And I started a series about 2 or 3 months ago because so many of my clients find the property service can be confusing and that they overlap. So I really just wanted to help clients to identify the different services available and also to showcase our amazing Irish business that we have here on the doorstep, such a wealth of talent. So I'm absolutely delighted this morning to introduce Johanna Lacy. Johanna is the principal solicitor of Johanna Lacy Solicitors, and she's based 2 offices based in Dublin and Kells. But as an estate agent, I suppose I'm particularly delighted to welcome you, Johanna, because so many of our clients, they find the process of conveyancing so long and so drawn out and so many issues. So, and so confusing. So, and I actually have to say I had the pleasure of dealing with Johanna, liaising with Johanna, just literally closing out 2 sales, one on Wednesday, in fact, and one today, the 18th. Fantastic. And I can tell you the whole process was so efficient and it wouldn't have been the same without Johanna. I really do. It was the easiest process, Johanna. Thank you for that. So maybe you might just start by giving us a little bit about your background and how you actually got into the legal area and what drew you to it. We'd all be delighted to hear it.
Well, Claire, I think it was in my blood, really. My great-grandfather set up the original family practice in Kells in 1893.
Wow.
So I was really destined to end up here. And actually, my grandfather and then my father then continued on in Kells. I actually moved down to Tipperary and set up on my own over 10 years ago, but my brother now is at the helm in Kells. So it's lovely to see a generation keep going. So 4th generation there in Kells. And then we have the side offices. My aunt is a solicitor in Blanchardstown. Yes, I'm here. I have another brother who was a solicitor but doesn't practice anymore. And I have a sister who's a barrister. So I suppose the nice thing is when you come to me, I have that wealth of experience, not just from me, but from all my colleagues around. And from my own perspective, I started my training in the big firms in Dublin and did a couple of years, did the hard slog before moving down to Tipperary. So I have a lot of colleagues as well. And to be honest with you, it's nice to have colleagues to bounce things off because the law is just so vast and no one can profess to know it all, and if they do, I question that. But once you have everything, at your doorstep to go and make queries, everything is there to be solved and to look further into it. So that's what I can give my clients.
It's fantastic, Johanna. Wow, God almighty, you've got an incredible experience. And as you say, it is in your genes, it is in your DNA. But maybe, I know our whole focus is going to be around the conveyancing of buying and selling, etc., the process. But maybe first you might just give us an idea of, the role, because so many people just don't, there's so many different functions of a solicitor, different roles, and not many people know exactly what it entails. But, we really do need a solicitor at every stage in our lives, I suppose, throughout our lives. So maybe you might just give us a brief synopsis, Johanna.
I will. And actually, I did last year, I did a presentation on a day in the life of a private client solicitor and what we do and when you need a solicitor. And I suppose the first time usually clients come to me is when they're buying their first house. And they're perhaps on their own, or they're with a partner, or I've just recently got married. So we get involved then. And at that stage, I always recommend making a will. And people kind of look at me, especially when they're young, and they go, why would you need to make a will? So once you have assets, and then following that, if you have children. And what people kind of look at me and say, well, sure, if I die, everything goes to my surviving partner or spouse and they look after the children. But what they tend to forget is what happens if both of them pass away together, and if a will isn't there, appointing guardians for their children, it can become very, very messy. So it's just a little bit of thought. I know nobody likes to think about death, but it's better to do that. The next stage, and actually what surprisingly, I got feedback from a presentation I did recently that people didn't realize they needed a solicitor to remortgage. The whole point on that is that the bank require a solicitor to certify title. So that's when it is required. So yes, for remortgaging, we're involved then. So as you're trying to save a bit of money, it's always good. And I have a couple of clients that every 2 or 3 years will remortgage, and it's in their interest, and they free up a bit of equity, and it's nearly a business for them to remortgage all of the time.
And it's not costly, Johanna, no? Is it not costly?
No, it's not too bad. And I just find that, without encouraging having to say to come back to me, when you're familiar with the title anyway and familiar with your clients and they can give you an update, it is very cost effective. I try and keep my fees down as much as possible, but there's registration fees and different things like that. But generally, without rule of thumb, it comes in at about 1,500. And I know that's everything VAT, registration fees. And I know that the likes of Ulster Bank, they give a contribution of 1,500 as part of their package. So it sort of ties in nicely there. And there's a reason for that figure, I think. So then the next stage is, Baba number 2 or 3 comes along and you need to get a bigger house. So you sell your first house and you buy the next house, or perhaps you might build. So that's another area that we do. It's, I have a lot of clients, especially from our Kells office, who would be building in the country. They get a site maybe from from their parents, and then they'll build. So there's a lot of planning issues, planning regulations, building regulations as well, so certification. And just to emphasize, and I know we'll talk about it later, the main aim when you buy a property for your solicitor is to get a complete set of title documents, which not just includes proof of ownership, it includes your planning documents, and there's about another 19, so 20 in total of ancillary documents that prove your title and make sure it's 100% in order. So that's my job as a purchaser solicitor, and also as a vendor solicitor, to produce that to the purchaser solicitors when you're selling. And then, so another area I do is employment. So again, along your life, you get a promotion in work. Handy to have a quick, your solicitor to have a quick look at that. It's no harm. It's money well spent. It only takes,
your employer's contract or employment contract, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Just, more often than not, it's not up for negotiation, but just that as an employee what you're signing at the end of the day, because we're familiar with it. And it's more so to know what to be protected against and what could happen down the line. And again, I act for clients in the WRC and Labour Court, and actually only over the summer we did a virtual Labour Court hearing, which was very interesting, and it worked very, very well. So I have the benefit of seeing what can go wrong, and what issues end up having to go to the WRC or the court. So that's how I can input then on the contract of making sure that they're protected in as much as they can be. So then, if unfortunately you're in a road traffic accident or you get injured, and the big point, and I've spoken to you about this before, Claire, is that just because you get injured doesn't mean you make a claim. It has to be because somebody has been negligent, and as a result of that negligence has caused that injury. So that's where, and we know the Bailey, the swing incident, and it was interesting listening to her comment on that, and she was very much, but I got injured. But you see what they got to, who was negligent there? There was no negligence as far as I can see from it. You know what I mean? But she was very much of the opinion, but I got injured, so I have a claim, and that is not the case. So I like to think I represent clients, that get injured genuinely as a result of somebody else's negligence, as a result of which they have a claim. Okay. So that's your next thing. The other issue, I actually do an awful lot of medical and negligence as well. It's an area that I got involved in a lot when I had a practice down in Tipperary. So if at the hands of a hospital or doctor there has been some negligence, the bar is very, very high though as regards proving negligence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but a recent one where an ectopic pregnancy wasn't spotted and should have been, when scans were looked back on, it should have been seen, as a result of which she was in 2 weeks in intensive care. Now, luckily for her, she went on to have 2 more children, so the actual damages were contained because the consequences of the negligence wasn't too bad, but it still was bad.
Yes.
Yeah. So then we go along another area, and we go along, and unfortunately, if your marriage breaks down and you need a family, law solicitor. So I do a good bit of that as well. It's not, there's no winners in that, but it's just to successfully dismantle your marriage in the best interests of the children and your assets. So we try and do that. And then the last one that I do, having spoken about wills, is I do probate, then administration of estate. So
very good. Wow.
This is a tour of all that I do in a day for clients throughout all their lives. Yeah.
That's a huge scope of work, Johanna, and I'd say that keeps you incredibly busy. My God, it's incredible. But I know your work ethic, your attention to detail is just fantastic. And that's what really, and your communication, that's what really, you keep all clients informed and make sure to close out, which is so important. So, but now let's bring it back now, I suppose, to the buying and selling. That's what our listeners want to hear today. So, really all about the buying and selling, your actual conveyancing process. Again, not many people know what this, it's completely misunderstood, this term, and it's like gobbledygook. Let's say a buyer might be, they're going out to buy their first home, they're hell-bent on getting their first home, but they don't really look at what do I need before I do that. And similarly with the seller as well, Johanna, okay, I'm putting my property down the market. Okay, so, but again, what's needed from a legal point of view, from your solicitor's point of view, and so going by choosing your solicitor. But can you really, for a person, let's say, who's thinking about buying or selling in early 2021, please God, your tips and advice here would be really helpful if you could maybe bring us through that. And actually, Johanna, just before you start, I have a question here from the Best of Dublin South, actually. And the question is, if an adjoining house has built an extension, do you need your solicitor to check planning or any other likely issues?
I would recommend that. I mean, more often than not, they come to us afterwards, because when they're doing an extension, I would hope, but the first person they usually go to is a builder.
Yes.
When really they should be going to an architect or engineering. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, and I'll just do a quick one because we'll probably cover it later on, is your title documents. So if you do an extension and your builder will come in and say, well, it's exempt, you don't need anything. That's exempt from planning, but you actually need a certificate of exemption from an architect.
Okay.
So you need to, yes. So you can go ahead and do that. The big thing with adjoining properties, and I think this is where the question relates, is the adjoining properties and whether perhaps you need, consent of the adjoining landowner. If you have to get planning permission, of course, all your notices go up and they see, what's going on, and they can put in an objection. But normally, I think people will chat to their neighbour beforehand and maybe just give them a heads up. And it's probably advisable to do that and just make sure that your boundaries are in order. So, my advice is, you should be going to your solicitor, and they'll be, just what I'm saying here now, your builder mightn't be sort of keeping you up to speed and know the title documents. The other big thing is the building regulations, which people think of planning and that's it. But the building regulations since 2014 have become extremely stringent, and there's huge regulations there. And architects and engineers will not certify compliance retrospectively anymore. They will have to be there at the time. And again, it's to get your certificate of compliance with building regulations that you are required to put with your title documents. And the problem for me as a solicitor, when I go to sell a property on behalf of clients and I say to them, did you do any works to the house? And they said, oh yes, 5 years ago we put on an extension, but the builder said it was exempt. And then you're going, oh no, we don't have the proper documents. And then it costs an awful lot more for that to be done retrospectively, if at all. And your purchase price maybe have to be compromised. And that's when you might have to reduce it by 5,000. And that's when the problem comes. So there's real consequences of not getting your title documents in order at the time. So yes, I would, just even a quick call to your solicitor pointing you in the right direction, if you're doing any works to the house, and just get things as you go along in order, so that when you ultimately go to sell, everything is in order and there's no issues.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Johanna. I hope, I think that's Carmen, the best job said. Carmen, I hope that answered your question. I'm sure Johanna has answered that for you, hopefully. And I just should let everybody know, anybody joining us, I'm actually discussing here, talking, a lovely chat with Johanna Lacy, Principal of Johanna Lacy Solicitor. So if you have any questions, just feel free, just put them up there in the chat box on the right, and we'll do our best to get around to them for you. So literally, I was just going to say about I'm so glad those planning regulations were brought in 2014, Johanna, because if you remember the awful disaster, my God, from, pre the recession, where there are now issues showing up with pyrite with, it's just unbelievable. But that we can cover that maybe later. But just bringing you back to the tips, like the pitfalls to help people if they're putting the property in the market, if they're selling their property, you might actually.
I'll start, I think, with selling a property first, because it then kind of leads nicely into the purchasing and the tips then involved. But as a vendor, and I've alluded to, you've bought your house 20 years ago and you've done various works, and they're the ones that you just, as a purchaser solicitor, you go, oh gosh, how long is it since and what's been done in the meantime? You have to just be very, very careful. So the first thing you do as a vendor solicitor, I like to say to my auctioneer, they come to me the minute they put the property on the market. Because the big issue, if there's a mortgage on title, your title documents, again, coming back to your title documents, will be with the bank. And the banks, they do things at their pace. And it usually takes about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the bank. If it's Pepper, it could be 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, it can take that long.
Be received. And that's where, so when a vendor comes to me and it's, we've just gone sale agreed, and you go, oh my gosh, we're going to have to wait another 3-4 weeks before we even get the title documents. So the minute you put the property on the market, that's when you should be consulting your solicitor first, and then you get your title documents. Now, what I do say to clients, because, at that stage, on receipt of the title documents, I say to my clients, do you want me to start reviewing them now and see what title documents need updating or missing, what we have to do in order to present the contracts? Now, some clients, I say to them, look, would you prefer, because they don't know if their house is going to be sold and they don't want to start these.
Exactly.
So you try and balance it. So I say, look, let me know immediately you think, you've got a good feel that it's going to, so you try and balance it like that, Claire, because you want to be fair to the client. And I suppose be fair to myself as well, because the minute I start working, I need to get paid for my time as well.
Of course, it's important to time that.
Yeah. But as long as your client knows what's involved, they can be informed and give you proper instructions at that time. So say, for instance, on one that I sold and is completing today, during the summer, the client told me he was putting the house on the market. There was tenants in it, so we had to do the termination notice, and that went through smoothly. And then he said, look, title documents there, hold on them. And then kind of towards the mid-November, he told me, look, it's looking good. We're getting a few offers in. Start looking at it now. So I started looking at it then. November, we issued contracts on the 7th of December. Luckily, cash buyer. All is good. So issued 7th of December, and we're closing today. So that's an example of that. It can be done and turned around quickly. So but that being said, there was no bank involved there. So number one, you have a title documents, and number two was the cash buyer. So I suppose, Claire, we've spoken about this before, about, why does it take so long? And usually, it's the banks. If a vendor solicitor hasn't been given enough warning to take up the title documents, there can be a delay there. And then as regards a purchaser, and then as a vendor, I have one vendor at the moment, they're selling and then they're buying, and we can go no further on their purchase because we're still waiting to hear back from the vendor, and they're waiting for their loan offer. So it affects sides all of the time. And typically, clients come to me as purchasers and say, I have loan approval in principle, and then it can take 4 to 6 weeks at least to get the official loan offer.
Because that's what question I was going to ask you, Joanne, the difference between full loan approval and approval in principle. So it can take that length of time.
So you can't get full loan approval until you have made your offer on a specific property has been accepted, and then you go full steam ahead. And that's what I say to clients as purchasers. That's your job. You go off and get that sorted. I look after the rest of it, you know,
Okay.
the legal side of it and doing all of that. And, you know, so yeah, it can take that long. And that's not the end of it. So then you get loan approval and say we lodge it then. So I'm skipping over to the purchaser side, but as a
Yes, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So as a purchaser, we then lodge the drawdown documents, and typically, you know, life insurance, the property insurance, that's our mortgage protection, our life insurance as it's called. All of these things take time. And the problem with the bank, again, going back, they do things at their own pace. So typically they say, you know, they will look at them and review them within maybe 48 hours of receipt. Then if they have any queries, they give themselves another 48 hours in which to raise them. Suddenly that's a week gone by from, you know, that it could nearly be, you know, 2 weeks by the time you send them in. They get them, review them, come back. And then, you know, suddenly you're into 3-4 weeks again. So you do the maths on it. That's where that's
where the delays. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's any issues arising on the property, even from a legal perspective. That's just the bank side of things. So going back to your vendor, you know, there's certain documents. So my job as a vendor solicitor is to issue contracts with a complete set of title documents. And the problem that I find as a purchaser solicitor is that they're not complete when you get them, and you're doing all this chasing. Whereas if you can, you know, they're fairly standard, but we all know what they are, you know what I mean? So vendor solicitor to do a proper investigation and, you know, with their vendor client and make sure that they have all the necessary, because then what happens is the purchaser engages a surveyor to go in and do an inspection. And it is hoped that that surveyor will not spot something that the vendor and their solicitor doesn't already know. Do you know what I mean? So you're just...
Of course. Oh, I can been there before, Johanna, I can tell you. Actually, there's a question here just from Hazel saying, oh, hi, Clarence, you want a great interview. I have a friend looking to buy an apartment. Is there any difference between buying a house versus an apartment from a legal perspective?
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose when you're buying a house, there could be all extensions and everything. So from an apartment perspective, there's not much that can be done as regards the apartment unit. So usually there's no issues with that, maybe maintenance and repair from your surveyor's point of view. But my big ask of the surveyor is in relation to the common areas. And that's the big thing. So you have management companies that manage the common areas, and they make sure that they're okay. And the big thing is on those, and alluding again to the 2014 regulations and pyrite and everything, I'd say half the apartments that I'm selling or buying, there are building regulation issues, fire safety certificate issues, as a result of which works need to be done to the whole apartment block. And the costs of those works are borne by the apartment owners, and a levy is then charged. So as a solicitor, purchaser solicitor of an apartment, my job is to review, they're called the MUD requisitions, the multi-unit development requisitions. There's a whole set of them, a couple of pages, and we get replies to them from the vendors and the management agency. And we scrutinise those and make sure, our big job is to make sure if there's any future levies that we should, you know, apply to. And I think, you know, an example of one that I had last year, where I was selling an apartment. And to be honest with you, as a vendor solicitor, we don't really look at those replies. So it's not up to us to investigate and to see if there are any issues. So you pass them on to the purchaser solicitor. If they have any issues with them, they raise them and we pass them back to the management agents. And on the sale of my apartment, there was no issues and we closed it fairly quickly and everyone was happy. About 6 months later, I bought an apartment in that unit for a client. And of course, I was on the other side of things. So when the MUD replies were received, I reviewed them and there were issues. Yes, and levies anticipated, they couldn't be quantified, and we ended up getting €10,000 off the purchase price for the client because of those. So I suppose that's just emphasising the importance of reviewing them carefully and making sure, you know, and you also rely on your client surveyor who will go on and he's the eyes and he'll go around and look and he'll say, see the state of the common areas, you know, and he'll give you tips, or if there's a balcony, or, you know, that there should be works done. So it's twofold there. So it's very important, very, very important with apartments.
Yeah, because actually I myself experienced that, Johanna, even with 2 sales up in not too far away, up in Sandyford, and fire safety issues. So we had to give the buyers both a reduction in price. So it was the only way around it. And as you say, the cost is borne by the management company, the apartment owners themselves. But Carol, I hope, or sorry, Hazel, that was your question. I hope that answered your question. Okay, Hazel. And I see there's another one from Siobhan, but I'm just going to actually, Johanna, let me see. Again, I know you've covered that really, because I know in the States, I'm a member of NAR in the National Association of Realtors in the US, and they close the sale in 48 hours, and they just cannot understand why it takes up to 6 months over here. But so maybe, I know now, again, just for anybody joining us, Johanna Lacy here, Johanna Lacy, principal of Johanna Lacy Solicitors. If you have any questions, please just put them up there in the top right-hand corner. So we don't have too much more time, Johanna, but just literally, I suppose, again, as I say, my clients say, why does it take so long? Why can't we shorten the process? So with COVID, let's say, for instance, I had to transform the business, like never realizing I'd be doing a Facebook Live here in 2020, Joanna, but I had to move everything online. So all my documents are now signed electronically, and we try and limit the physical interaction between, potential buyers, sellers, as much as we can, and for viewers, for lettings. I know it's not easy, but I suppose can all the conveyancing documents now be signed online, or?
Most of them can be done online. So, for instance, and this is one I'm involved with you, Claire, where I have a client who lives in Dubai and selling an apartment at the moment, and I emailed him the documents over the weekend. I did a Zoom call with him on Monday morning, witnessed him signing all of the documents, which under the e-commerce act is allowed. I can do it over video, and he put them in DHL. I received the documents from Dubai on Wednesday morning, and we're closing the sale today.
Yeah, absolutely.
One where we sent out the contracts at the start of December, and there is a mortgage involved with that one, and the purchaser solicitor has got that all. I'm just waiting. He's expecting funds today, so hopefully we'll get that one over the line as well. But having had a practice down in Tipperary and also having my practice in Kells, I do an awful lot remotely. So, for instance, a Tipperary client selling a site in Moyglass in Tipperary today did all of it online, got everything signed, and we're closing that one today as well. So all around the country, closing a purchase in Wicklow today as well. So it doesn't matter really where you can be anywhere. So the clients, we can look at that service. Yeah, the only thing is, again, the banks. I get clients in to sign the bank documents, because it's just I don't want to take any issue or anything with those, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Okay. And could that change in the future, Joanna? Could that ever go online, or do we always
can? If you really needed to do them online, we can do them. But I prefer to get clients in to do them, and they will come in for mortgages and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there though, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. So maybe just one last little area is, again, I know our listeners will want to know really about, how can we shorten the whole conveyancing process here, make it more streamlined, going from sale agreed. I think it's fine getting to your sale agreed stage if you've got a fantastic property, you've got your right price, but it's the sale agreed to sold. How can we shorten that, let's say, or do you know of any new trends, maybe future trends, Johanna?
Yeah, there is, and it's a trend that I do anyway, but there are kind of online platforms now. And as you said there at the introduction, it's about keeping all of the stakeholders involved in the process updated and finding solutions. Yes. Too often, people are looking for problems, but if a problem is identified, you immediately look for a solution and you get it over the line. So that's one of my, I would hope, fortes. I believe that I'm a solutions solicitor, and you keep everyone informed. There's none of this cloak and dagger stuff of people chasing, going, where are we at? Have pre-contract queries been replied to? Who has the loan offer? As long as everyone knows what's happening and we can keep things moving. And there is ways, even with mortgages involved, I had one, there was problems and the surveyor, but we got them sorted. And literally within the last 10 days, we've gotten drawdown of a mortgage just by chasing. So there is ways of doing it.
Yeah. That's really good to know, Johanna. Got some amazing nuggets there, and I really hope that was helpful for all our listeners. There's just one last, Siobhan has just asked a question here Oh yeah. Is it true that sometime next year house sales would close faster than currently is the case, which is slow? Well, in actual fact, Siobhan, that's just literally what we were talking about there. It is slow. It is slow. And I think, Johanna, there is a lot of apps that are being developed now to try and, if you like, bring all parties, the solicitors, the estate agents, bring them all together to try and shorten this process. But yes, Siobhan, it's definitely in the pipeline, that's for sure. And I only hope God.
Yeah, the basis of those, Claire, of those platforms are to keep everyone informed, and I'm involved in a few of them, and they are very good. But email is a great thing. Copy everyone. I blind copy my clients on things so that they can just see what's going on.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, you're keeping everybody in the loop. Full transparency, and it just takes away the, oh God, who's doing what, what's happening here, or why come this? It just, because the lack of communication is the worst for any client. That's when they say, I haven't heard back from my solicitor, or look, now where's the estate agent? And it's the communication is key, and as you say, keeping everybody in the loop. It's just fantastic. Well,
ultimately, Claire, everyone involved wants the thing done as quick as possible. So it's a no-brainer, really. People want to get out of sold their property into the property. We want to do the work quickly and efficiently and get paid at the end of it, as do the auctioneers. I don't mean to, but also there for. So it's in everyone's interest to get it over the line, and that's my, I think people get annoyed at me chasing them, but look,
I think you're definitely doing the right thing. You're definitely doing the right thing, Johanna. And Siobhan Fitzpatrick, there's a lovely little note there to say, fantastic nuggets of advice and information here, Claire Connie, Johanna, Lacy. Thank you. And thank you for that, Siobhan. We're very much appreciated. So, Johanna, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. You've been so good today to give up your time to join us on All Under One Roof. So, and if anybody has any, is there any other? Yeah. Okay, no, I know we probably won't get time really to have any more questions, Johanna, but if anybody needs to talk to you or have a consultation with you, can you tell me, Johanna, can they find out more information?
I'm a bit of an email queen, I have to say. So the best way, in fairness, is to email me at Johanna, that's JOHANNA, at JLacy, JLACY.ie. So pop me an email. That's the best way I'll get back to you, because, in my time, I can get back to you. So no problem. Delighted to deal with any queries and, make this process quicker and get everyone happier. Yeah.
Amen. Gosh, and Johanna, thank you so much, Johanna. I really do appreciate it. Say again for giving your time. Hope you have a fabulous Christmas. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your questions. And I really hope that you all have a very, very safe and happy Christmas. And God, please God, we'll have a really, really good 2021. So looking forward to seeing you all then. Thanks, Johanna. Take care.
All the best. Happy Christmas.
And you too, Johanna. All the best. Bye.